Greetings, programs. It's Final Thoughts Video 2, the sequel, the comeback, two thoughts. This is the weekly recap video where I have to share my thoughts on the movies I released Disney Plus videos for this week. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into it with the first movie. The Strongest Man in the World. Kurt Russell ends his Medfield College trilogy with probably the weakest of the two that are available on Disney Plus. The other one available is The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, which came out in 1969. And that one at the time felt very fresh, very energized, and felt, although it was a Disney gimmick comedy, felt very much like it was progressing forward with the formula. All the fresh inventiveness that came with the first one, The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, felt like it was sucked into a vacuum, and all we're left now is the shell of the gimmick comedy formula that Disney's been using for decades at this point. All of it just, it feels void of any sort of character. Part of the reason is Kurt Russell's barely in this movie. He basically walks out of the film for 20 minutes at a time, and the movie focuses on other side characters, and I just felt like that was kind of strange for him being the headline star for two movies, and then him kind of making almost like guest appearances in this film, until the film really eventually needs him in the final act. Fun concept, but the film does absolutely nothing with the gimmick, and it feels very stale compared to a man gaining the ability to become a computer or a guy gaining this ability to become invincible. This one just feels very sort of antiquated. Antiquated is fine. You can get by on antiquated ideas. But the problem with these movies is that the people in them exist in a reality where they just accept the abnormality of the gimmick. Unlike, say, The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, where we spend a great deal of time of the movie establishing that they are witnessing a man who has somehow become a computer, and there's a fascination with that. And I get it. If you let people become aware of the gimmick, you then have to spend some part of the movie explaining the gimmick and the reasons why they exist in this reality. And sometimes you just don't want to do that in your movie because it just draws attention to a very poor plot. But it definitely presents your characters in a way that they all feel kind of stupid. The film more or less just becomes a live action cartoon at that point. Overall, the movie is very meh. If you're going to watch a movie out of this trilogy, the two available on Disney Plus anyway, watch The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. That one's at least a little bit better, and you can get way more fun out of it than The Strongest Man in the World. So go ahead and watch Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. I'll wait. The next one up is the Castaway Cowboy, and this one is easily the most pointless Disney movie to ever movie in this marathon. This movie is so incredibly dull. More or less, James Garner is a cowboy who washes up on the shores of Hawaii, more specifically a potato farm that's not producing potatoes, and one thing leads to another, and he starts teaching the ranch hands how to raise cattle for them to sell and to save the farm. There are absolutely no stakes in this movie. He trains the farm hands to become ranchers, but that's about it. You kind of care that Vera Miles, who plays the ranch owner, may lose the farm, but that's as far as you get as far as stakes go. You kind of like your character, but then you realize she's basically holding James Garner captive and making him train the farm hands, and then she'll let him leave and do whatever the hell he wants. The film's villain is this guy who wants to marry her to own the farm, and his motivations is that if the farm becomes successful, she won't marry him, so he sabotages the ranch. It makes no sense, and somehow Hawaiian witch doctors get into the mix, and it makes even less sense. This movie. Another thing is that I have no idea when this movie takes place. I have to assume it might be between the 1850 and the early 1900s. They mention the war, but they don't mention what war, so I'm thinking maybe it's the Civil War. Wouldn't the Civil War be a little too early for cowboys and people living on the island and communities and stuff like that? I don't know the history of Hawaii, so I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm done talking about this one. Don't watch it. If I had to give it a score, 2 out of 10. That's being generous, so just turn off your TV. That might be easier. And finally, we have Escape to Witch Mountain, which came out in 1975, and it's the start of the Witch Mountain franchise for Disney, a franchise that they kind of dabbled in over the course of many decades. This was easily my biggest surprise in this entire marathon so far. I absolutely adore this movie. Some context, I've never seen any of the Witch Mountain movies. I've never seen this one, its sequel. I've never seen the Disney Channel remake in 95. I didn't even watch the one with The Rock that came out in 2009. Growing up, I just heard the word witch, and I'm automatically tuned out because I wasn't a big fan of fantasy, and I also wasn't a huge fan of horror. So, I get that, hear the word witch, and I'm like, no, not for me. The first thing that has to be pointed out is The direction and the cinematography of this movie is miles away from anything Disney has done so far. I think one of the first things I tweeted when watching this movie was, oh my God, they're actually moving the camera. They're moving it, they're zooming, they're actually doing camera shots, and they're not just doing static setups. And it is amazing how much that transforms a film, especially when watching all these other Disney films that do just static setup shots that are clearly sets. These are not sets. These are just location shots and so much beauty in camera. All the credit has to go to cinematographer Frank V. Phillips and then director John Huff. Huff was brand new to the Disney family as far as, the directors for hire at the time. And he had a horror background, which I thought was kind of odd. He had a British horror background doing a lot of stuff for Hammer. And he went on to do movies like The Incubus and did another Disney horror movie down the line. I think a big reason why this film works is that it knows it's a chase movie and it knows that it has to keep the momentum going and consistent. It pauses every once in a while for a nice character moment and a nice character beat, and it keeps going and it keeps building momentum until the finale. And another reason why I think the film works is that we, at the very beginning, get a sense of what these characters' powers are and how they're linked by their powers through with the telepathy and the ability to manipulate objects. And you can get a sense of the great bond that they have as brother and sister together as they communicate with each other, not by speaking, but just through telepathy, which is really cool and kind of fun to see in a Disney film. I must say, I was like literally leaning forward into my TV during the final chase scene. The final chase is so incredibly shot and brilliantly directed, and there's so much going on, so much choreography going on with the cars, and there's helicopters going on, and you have shots of the helicopter above the cars, and the helicopter again, like clipping the cars just barely, and it's so awesome and so energized. I said at one point, is this a Disney movie? Because this doesn't feel like something that Disney would do with their films, and that's the refreshing part about it. And it just crescendos so well, and then it has a very much a sense of how the final chase scene in E.T. is. I would even say this film almost rivals the final chase in E.T. if it wasn't for the visual effects. Once we get to the visual effects, that's where E.T. transcends Witch Mountain, unfortunately. They just aren't very good. They don't hold up very well. They weren't executed probably very well for the time. There wasn't computers back then, so you have to give them a little bit of slack, but I feel like once the visual effects come into play, it kind of takes away the charm of the finale, which is a bummer. I had a lot of fun with this. I can't wait to go back and watch it again down the line. I think families who are looking for a fun film on Disney Plus to watch, Escape to Witch Mountain is aces, especially if you're looking for something a little bit classic, something a little more adult heavy. This one kind of leans more. I think I would probably have like 10-year-olds could probably get into this movie very easily. Anything lower might be pushing it a little bit, but there's a lot of fun, a lot of adventure, and just a lot of exciting things going on in this film. And it's a shame, because I'm already seeing a couple more films down the line at this point, that Disney falls back into their old ways really fast after Escape to Witch Mountain, which is a big bummer. So that's it. Those are my thoughts on the movies that I watched this week. If you guys have seen them before and have something to say about them, definitely let me know what you think down below in the comments. Give this video a like, and definitely please consider subscribing. Until next time, next week. Thanks so much. End of line.